Alex here from ornamentdesigns.com, and in this video I'm going to teach you how to make this Easter egg. Now you may actually recognize this. I've done a video of this same design before about 5 years ago. It's the classic red and gold Easter egg design. Now the difference between that egg and this egg is that that was glitter and this is actually fabric. This is using satin fabric. Also, the embellishment in the center is different for this one. But other than that, the design is basically the same. It's the same band of sequins around the side. And I hope that you really enjoy this. I'm actually going to go through with you step by step and teach you how to make it, whereas the other video was just a time lapse set to music and not an actual tutorial. So I hope you like this one. Also, the video quality is much better because I've got better technology now. So anyway, with that being said, let's get started. Okay, so the basic tools and materials that you'll need to make this egg are some fabric scissors, a craft knife, a tucking tool. I use a large upholstery needle. You'll need some craft glue, some seed beads or roquel beads. Mine are quite small. Just make sure that they fit onto your sequin pins. And speaking of sequin pins, you'll need some. These are 3/4 of an inch gold sequin pins. Then you'll need some sequins. I have some red metallic and gold hologram sequins. These are 5mm slightly cupped sequins, and I like the hologram sequins because they have this nice extra sparkle to them. That's quite pretty. But I don't have any red hologram sequins right now, so I'm just using plain metallic. Then you're going to need some kind of embellishment to go in the center of your egg, and I'm using these large kaleidoscope metallic sequins. And of course you'll need a foam egg. This is a polystyrene smooth foam egg. And you'll need some fabric. I'm using red satin fabric. And let's just go ahead and get started. So the first thing we need to do is find the mold line on the egg. And it's hard to see in this video, I'm sorry, because of the lighting, and the light is bouncing off that white so brightly. It's very hard to see my mold line, but I promise you on my egg there is a mold line going all the way around the egg. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to cut into the egg about 1 centimeter all the way around along that mold line. And in the interest of saving some time, we're going to go ahead and skip ahead to the next step. Once you've finished cutting all the way along the mold line, you'll take your tucking tool and just run it through the cut just to widen it up a bit, make it smooth, make sure that it's that you've completely cut it and you haven't missed any section, so that the tucking process, which is what we are doing now, will be easier. Okay, so you're going to take your fabric and you're going to lay it over the top of the egg. And then you're going to take the edges of the fabric and you're going to start tucking them into that groove, that cut that you made. And working with satin is a little bit difficult, and also working with a giant piece like I have here can be a little hard. You might need to cut your fabric down a little bit to make it easier. If you've done a lot of these kind of ornaments before, you may be able to work with a large piece like this. It's up to you. But you'll just take your fabric and you'll start tucking it in to that groove, trying to straighten it out as much as you can and smooth it out as much as you can along that edge. Especially at first here, there's going to be a lot of creases and wrinkles along the edge that are kind of unavoidable. But once we cut off all that excess fabric, then we'll be able to smooth and get most of those wrinkles out. So go ahead and trim off the excess and continue tucking your fabric into the groove and smoothing out the wrinkles. Now satin is, like I said, satin is very difficult to work with. It tends to slip and it tends to be hard to tuck in and to really grip onto that foam. It takes some practice. If you've never made an ornament like this before, I suggest you try cotton at first and work up to the satin once you get good at doing the tucking with some cotton. And some of these wrinkles on the edge here are kind of unavoidable, but you want to try to get it as smooth as you possibly can. Continue to trim off the excess as necessary, but be careful not to trim off too much. But basically, you don't want any fabric sticking out of that groove when you're finished. You want it to be nice and clean. All right, now in the interest of saving time, because this actually takes quite a while, I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead one more time. Okay, so now I'm just about finished covering my egg with fabric. I've done both sides, as you can see, and I'm just trying to clean up the seams a little bit and try to get it as smooth as possible. Some of those wrinkles are inevitable. I won't be able to get them out, and I'll just go ahead and leave them because they will be covered up with sequins in the next step. It won't really matter and it won't show. So don't try to be too much of a perfectionist about it. All right, now we need to get some glue, and you'll just need a little bit of glue. You'll just squeeze it out onto something. I usually use a little plastic tray. And then you get one of your sequin pins, and then you'll get a seed bead or roquel bead, and you'll thread the bead onto the pin like this, and then you'll thread a sequin onto the pin like that, and then dip it in some glue, dip the end in some glue. You don't want too much, just a little bit. And then you might want a thimble here or something, and you'll push that pin down into the seam where your two fabrics meet, where your cut is. And you'll need the thimble because at this point you're going through a couple layers of fabric as well as foam, and it makes it a little bit difficult to push in. So you'll need something to protect your fingers, otherwise you will be in pain by the end of this. So a thimble is good. Sometimes I use the end of a pencil, just something that will help you sort of get some leverage and see. Yeah, sometimes you'll have to readjust it. Sometimes it might just might not want to go through the layers of fabric, and you might have to use some force. Be careful not to bend your pins though. But see, there you go. And we're just going to keep putting sequins all the way around the egg along that seam. And I'm going to skip ahead here to save on some time. All right, so now I'm just about done with this row of sequins. It's probably taken me about, I'd say an hour or more to get this far in the process. So it does take some time. Just be patient and keep at it, and eventually you will see a nice, pretty line of sequins all the way around your egg, like this. All right, in the next step, we're going to add another row of sequins above this gold row of sequins, and we're going to do alternating colors. We're going to do one gold sequin, one red sequin, one gold sequin, one red sequin. And I like to line them up sort of so one sequin isn't directly above the one below it, where it's kind of off center and sort of in between the two sequins below it. It might be a little bit hard to describe. The center of the sequin above is actually in between the center of the two sequins below. Gosh, I hope that makes sense. And then eventually it's going to start looking something like this. I've sped this up a little bit to save on time, but I kind of wanted you to get the idea of how this starts to look as we're alternating from gold to red. Okay, all right, so let's skip ahead again. And this is what it looks like when that row is finished. And now we're going to flip it over and we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. And as you can see here, I'm lining up my gold sequins directly above the gold sequins on the other side. And the red sequins are lined directly above the red sequins on the other side. All right, so now this is what it looks like when we've got our second row of alternating colored sequins finished. And it's starting to look pretty good, nice and sparkly, and the satin is starting to smooth out. And now we're going to add 2 more rows of sequins on either side, and we're going to do just solid gold. We're actually finished with the red sequins now. Now we're just concentrating on the gold. All right, so we skipped ahead again, and now you can see what this looks like with 2 more rows of gold sequins added. Now it's time to move on to the next and last 2 rows of sequins. And in this row, or in these rows, what we're going to be doing is actually leaving a space between sequins. So you'll pin your first sequin, and it should be the center of the sequin should be in between the center of the 2 sequins below. And then you'll skip the next space and you'll move on to the next space. Like this. And here's a nice close-up of what it looks like once I've got about 4 of those sequins pinned. You can see how they line up. And this is how it looks when you're finished with one side. And now both sides. So we are done with the sequins around our egg. And it looks pretty good. Now it's time to put on our embellishments in the center. And I have these large gold metallic sequin shapes that I bought at Cartwright's many years ago. And they're kind of perfect for the center of my egg here. I think they're quite pretty. So this is what I'm going to use. You may have something completely different. Probably you're going to have something completely different because I don't even know if they sell these anymore at Cartwright's. Be creative. Search all over your local craft shop and see what you can find. And I'm sure you'll be able to find something that's going to look really pretty in the center of your egg. Here I'm using a seed bead and then a sequin, a red sequin, and then my large metallic shape threaded onto a sequin pin and pinning it to the center of my egg. Now, finding the center of your egg might be a bit of a challenge. Basically, you just have to use your best judgment. You've just got to eyeball it to find where the center is or where you want the center of it to be. And actually, after finishing this and looking at it again, I think I may have gotten mine a little bit off center, which means, of course, I'll be keeping this for myself. I will not be selling it because it's not perfect. But you might want to not glue it down until you're absolutely sure that you've got it centered. So, and here I thought, okay, well, I'll use my seed beads to pin down the rest of the shape along the edges of the shape because they kind of stick up if I don't pin the sides down. But I looked at it and I wasn't very happy with those seed beads, and so I decided to use some gold beads. And these have been sitting in my supplies forever, and I really haven't had much of a use for them. So, all right, so as you can see, I took that center pin out and decided to change it to one of these gold beads that I have. Actually, if I had some longer pins at this point, I would use them. But I don't have anything longer than 3/4 of an inch in gold. So I'm just going to stick with the 3/4 of an inch. But if you do have an inch or something maybe slightly longer, it might be to your advantage if you're using a larger bead here. So I didn't include these gold beads in the initial tools and materials that you need because your embellishment may be completely different than mine and you may not need gold beads like this. You may decide to use gold sequins instead. And so that's why I didn't include them in the initial materials that you need. So, but what I'm doing here is I'm using those gold beads and I'm just pinning them all the way around to pin down my metallic shape. Now I've finished pinning down my center embellishment, and I'm going to use these gold beads and I'm just going to pin some of them around the center embellishment in that space between the sequin edge and the center embellishment, just to add a little bit extra sparkle, to give it a little bit more dimension. It's up to you whether or not you need these. You can use sequins as well. You don't have to use beads like I am. You can use sequins like I actually did on the original video, the one I did 5 years ago. For this part, I actually used sequins instead of these beads. But for this one, I like these gold beads, so I'm going to use the gold beads. And again, I'm just using my best judgment to try to line these up. I did one at the top, one at the bottom, and two on the sides first. And then I'm going to add a few more in between those other beads. All right, I've jumped ahead again, and I'm finished with this side. And you can see how I've placed those beads around my center embellishment. And actually, it looks pretty good from the side like this. So, all right, so let's turn our eggs over and do the other side. Okay, so obviously we've skipped ahead again, and I am all finished. I've done my embellishment on both sides. I've done my beads on both sides, and I think it looks pretty good. I really like the way it looks from the side. It's going to look great in a basket. I hope you all have enjoyed this video tutorial. I know I've enjoyed making it for you. And if you haven't seen the old video that I did 5 years ago of the same design, I'll go ahead and put a link up here for you to check that out. It's basically the same design, just using glitter instead of satin. So one more thing before I go, I would just like to mention that these are not exclusive for Easter. Even though I call this an Easter egg, you can add a hanging ribbon and use this on a Christmas tree or just decorating any time of year. And as you can see with this particular egg, the center embellishment is completely different. So if you're interested in learning how to do this, let me know and I may do a blog post on it for you. All right, thank you guys so much for watching. Take care and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.